The future's unpredictability demands a degree of flexibility when designing a building. To prevent the endless carbon emission of demolition and rebuilding, structures must be constructed such that they can last for far longer than currently imagined. I had previously designed a lightweight building centered around program with minimal concern for its container. Emphasis was placed on its recyclability. The future, however, must be in the heavy weight and the interest in long-lasting container with non-specific program, and the need for reusability over recyclability. This is not a new idea. The world is littered with structures older than a millennium. Ely Cathedral has lasted some 980 years using techniques learnt from the Romans. With this, they built a sturdy shell, capable of housing both the clergy but also cavalry horses, as Oliver Cromwell proved despite the church. He unwittingly changed the space's experiential qualities dramatically, as a strictly ordered, incense-scented rhythm of liturgy was replaced by the cacophony of horses and their co-inhabitants. Spending his time in an equally formidable building, St. Jerome used the timber structure to specialize the space and infinitely improve the flexibility of his study, again shifting the experience of the space. And so, reasoning from these precedents has been applied to a proposal. The currently unoccupied site is located in a surprisingly low-density area of Southwark, considering its proximity to the river. The structure itself is composed of solid granite blocks, forming a heavyweight structure with significant thermal mass and incredible longevity. Lighter weight timber sections attach parasitically, forming internal rooms or spaces. While the granite has the potential to last millennia, the timber may last centuries, and the fittings decades. Although some flexibility has been sacrificed for the sake of longevity, the interior of the structure is highly adaptable and can be refitted with the timber infill to serve a variety of programs. This ability to serve multiple programs is amplified by the variety of scales of space present, from large triple-height spaces to more enclosed arch spaces. The system also presents a variety of thermal qualities of space. In order to preserve the granite's monolithic quality, insulation was not included in areas requiring a less constant temperature, including more transient spaces one may walk through. Rooms that may be occupied consistently for a day or longer are lined with plywood and insulation to maintain a constant thermal environment. Of course, all spaces are heated to a large extent by solar gain, with ventilation possible through windows for cooling. Otherwise, surfaces and pipes can fit underneath the suspended floors. Traditional methods in parts have been combined with more modern technologies, juxtaposing a slate-shingled roof against bent laminated plywood interiors. As thermal environment changes, so too does the experiential, as the various environmental and material differences coincide to create dramatically different spaces that share a common geometry in the vault and column. The quietly intimate space of the skylight-lit cafe gives way to the cavernous height of the gallery. This timber lining and infill allows for highly specific specialization and the dividing of otherwise cavernous spaces into cozy studies or workshops. Combined with the logic of structural stone, the site's geology has a significant influence on the structure's form. Despite being the darling of architects since the 20th century, reinforced concrete's lifespan is curtailed by the corrosion caused by rebar. As such, stone is used. Now this affects significantly the form of the structure, as the tension of lintels and cantilevers must be replaced by the simple compression of the arch and vault. As for the building's construction, the Jubilee line runs under the site, and no deep foundations may be built within 3 meters of the tunnels. Deep foundations are necessary in order to load directly onto the stronger London clay. The resulting restriction creates large arch spaces, as the structure is forced to load only on the edges of these boundaries. This plan highlights the 3 large key spaces created by the methodology, with their expansive spans therefore being a necessity. The angular plan of the structure is again due to the form of arches. The form was ascertained by first taking the plan of the site with tube tunnel cuts removed. The arches were then cut due to their geometry. These cuts were made as such that all overhangs or incomplete arches were removed, as these would constitute a cantilever. With the geometry of the foundations understood, the remaining solids in the mass were cut into vaulted spaces, whose smaller spans will likely outlast the large arches. Cuts were then made in the structure to allow daylighting for all spaces. There are further ramifications, however, to the site's geology. The made ground above the structural clay is rather polluted, being filled with centuries' worth of waste, including brick fragments, rotting timber, and concrete pieces. The site currently exists as a concrete-covered car park atop contaminated clay. To remedy this and fertilize the ground, I propose strategically rewilding the land around the building. The strategy comes in the choice of plants initially sowed. Comfreys are particularly effective due to their deep roots being able to extract nutrients from further than similar plants. Additionally, the comfrey's foliage produces a concentration of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium compounds common in fertilizers, feeding the ground. The common nettle will also be used for similar reasons of foliage nourishing surrounding soils. As an element intended to last an incredibly long time, care has been taken in dealing with the granite structure. These structural elements are composed of granite extracted from Mount Sorrel Quarry in Leicestershire, from which granite has a pink hue. The distinctive rough edge and cut lines are produced by the process of cutting stone along its natural fault lines before extraction. The stone is then cut into movable units in a nearby facility before stonemasons finish the piece and cut any details. The stone's source points to another advantage over concrete. The majority of stone's embodied carbon is in its transport, and so, having found the location of all dense stone in the southern British Isles, I chose the closest available quarry to minimise carbon emissions. Once transported and cut, the stone is laid piece by piece in interlocking blocks, joined by NHL5 lime mortar, with each piece sized specifically so that it is below the lifting capacity of most cranes. The process of extracting and then cutting the stone produces an excess of rubble, which can be used as infill in areas of the structure, minimizing waste while reinforcing the vaulting. The aforementioned lime mortar is used rather than Portland cement in the infill to reduce embodied carbon, due to lime's lower burning temperature. While the timber may not be intended to last as long as the stone, it should still be designed to have as long a lifespan as possible. Facing the exterior weathering conditions at parts, the timber must be hardy. It is first cut from FSC assured oak, then the logs are cut into parts. The logs are cut as such that the centre of the log is retained as the boxed heart. The boxed heart will be used in structural members, as the heart's presence ensures that all warping is equalised around a centre. The wood is then seasoned in the dry space for 4 to 5 years. In the roof, the structure consists of a modular screwless system. Screwless because oak can produce an acid that corrodes steel over time. Up close, traditional joinery is used, including mortars and tenon joints, cross-halving joints, and finally, scarf joints. Scarf joints are used due to length restrictions caused by the natural dimensions of oak. To properly understand the applications of the building, I propose some programs. The Southwark Arts Centre demonstrates the use of large-scale spaces, shown in particular in the lecture theatre and exhibition area. Taking advantage of the height, the vaulted space located at the front becomes an exhibition space. The rhythm of the columns combined with the dividers provides a strictly directional space. Onlookers can gaze down from the cafe down into the gallery, the cafe's insulated timber structure being perched on the corbels of the granite columns. Adjacent to the exhibition area and providing an expansive space with daylighting, the lecture theatre lines a large arch with timber. In fact, just after midday, the sun strikes the stage just right to act as a spotlight. The timber interior is faceted to encourage the diffusion of sound, reducing reverberation times to an acceptable level. Blinds can also be lowered to further reduce reverb and provide some shade. Increasingly relevant, housing presents an opportunity to implement an entirely cellular program. The vaulting comes into its own as its columns are used to help support multiple bedrooms, while the lecture theatre is subdivided dramatically. Acting as light well and ventilation shaft for the public areas, the stair atrium connects all floors in a single view. In all proposed uses, the stair acts as a means of drawing light into the darker sections of the vaulted spaces. In this version of the atrium, the use of plywood walls against the granite structure can be seen clearly. After walking from the stairway, you proceed to your bedroom, in this case housed inside a vault where the exhibition space once sat. The bedrooms are lined with plywood, laminated to provide a curved form capable of hugging the vaulting with room for insulation. Within the room, the sunlight illuminates the desk for reading, but never stretches far back enough to strike the bed, instead providing a warm glow from the ply's varnished birch facing. With regard to sunlight, the precise daylighting character must be explored, as the one constant in the building's entire lifespan. Featuring both large and small-scale spaces requiring illumination, the makespace provides such an exploration. Metal and wood workshops are located strategically to receive indirect but strong sunlight to allow for work. The wood workshop replaces what was the exhibition space in the vaulted space. The workshop hosts workbenches along with machinery including a CNC router, lathes and bandsaws, all of which are serviced by the galvanized steel gantry held aloft by the granite corbels. The space is shaded with horizontal louvers to prevent distracting sunlight from reaching the workbenches. A co-working space is now housed in the roof's timber-constructed space. Daylight is available deep into the structure via skylights, in a roof that references vaulting. While the interior is entirely timber, plywood is used in those areas with shorter lifespans, the floor and fittings, while oak is used in the structure. Should the space need ventilation, the skylights can be opened, providing a low-rise stack effect. But what if I were to experience the vaulted space as gallery and then as workshop? Would I know it was the same space? These two images alone would suggest perhaps not, as the phenomenology of the space has been altered dramatically. Where the almost ecclesiastical gallery invites me to the window, the fierce horizontality of the workshop encourages me to peer to the side or on the columns. But is it not arrogant to even propose how the structure lived once built? Does it not cease to be mine after the last stone is laid? Speaking on the solitude of buildings, Raphael Moneo referred to how buildings take on their own identities independent of the architect's intentions. One could only assume, therefore, that this building would surely take on a range of uses, some respectful to my wishes, some disrespectful, and some that hardly knew I existed at all. Who can say if Cromwell thought of the original builders of Ely Cathedral at all, or if he just looked to house his horses? Can the builder ever really impose their wishes upon the future of a building? John Soane must have thought along these lines when choosing to have his Bank of England depicted as a ruin ruled over by nature rather than humanity. And so, I've imagined how my building could live, if it is mine at all. After being built, it would exist as a stalwart of another time in Southwark, changing ever so slightly, but not to the extent of its surroundings. As the world changes in ways I couldn't have imagined, so too does the building, adding and subtracting new elements. After environmental calamity, when the timber and fittings couldn't survive something that couldn't have been predicted, I like to imagine the stone standing as a ruin. I would hope that it finds some sort of occupants, though I doubt that they would care, nor know, for what I think. Oh, one more thing. If you have any time, I encourage you to follow the link in the description, or scan the QR code on a smartphone or computer to an interactive panorama of the vaulted space. It gives a far better impression of the spatial qualities than any still image. Here is a video giving a preview of the panorama. The panorama should open as a page on a browser, and if open on a smartphone will produce an approximation of virtual reality, tracking your movement. If on a computer, click and drag with the left mouse button to navigate. Thank you.